Janet and I have been married for 12 years. We've been in love with each other since we were 10 years old. I was never interested in college, so immediately after graduation I got an initial job at Desmond Engineering as a draftsman. A year later, Janet and I got married. In the next year we became the happy parents of twin girls, Bethany and Brittany. It wasn't easy for us for the first few years, but we didn't spare any money and everything seemed to be fine. I was still a draftsman, but a few steps higher than when I started. Money was better, but it was still tight. We managed to save enough to buy a small house, and we had two good cars. They weren't new, but they weren't exactly dead either. Janet always wanted to be a housewife, so she never worked. We didn't need any extra money, so that was fine with me. We were both healthy and in good shape. Janet is a little bigger than when we got married, but not by much. She was just over 1.5 meters tall, and she had dark brown hair that she wore with bangs. She looked like a little Mary Osmond. I haven't changed at all. I played on the school football team on the right wing, so I wasn't small, but I wasn't flabby either. Billy Martin moved to Reading from Lancaster about a year ago and got a job at Desmond Engineering as a surveyor. Billy and I played football against each other and immediately became friends. He also married his high school friend, a red-haired girl named Sarah. Sarah and Janet became friends immediately. They didn't have children yet, but they were perfect babysitters. In our free time, Billy and I enjoyed each other's company. It was a pleasant break from the wives. Of course, Janet and Sarah did the same thing. They went shopping together to parties and club meetings, and Billy and I watched girls and TV. Sarah also got a job as a secretary at a company located near the city. I started noticing some things about 6 months ago. Previously, a parent-teacher meeting was held once a month, but now it has become held every week. Sarah didn't have any children, but she always went to meetings with Janet. The frequency of Tupperware and Magic Chef parties seemed to increase every month, but they never bought anything. They joined a book club, but they never seemed to find time to read. On weekends, they spent hours shopping, but bought very little. Janet's collection of fashionable underwear seemed to be replenished, but I never managed to enjoy any of them. It started to torment me. I never talked to Billy about anything because he didn't seem to pay attention to it. I didn't want to cause problems if something was going on. About an hour after I put the girls to bed, Janet came home from some kind of party. She took a shower before Sarah picked her up, and as soon as she got home, she took another one. It seemed strange to me. While she was in the shower, I quickly looked into the basket and found a set of black lace underwear. So, who would wear black lace lingerie to a party? Am not in the habit of checking my wife's panties, but I did it tonight and found them wet and sticky. I put them in my pocket. Until tonight, I had never looked into my wife's purse or wallet. The only thing that really interested me was her mobile phone. Obviously, she was pretty sure that I wouldn't eavesdrop because she hadn't deleted a single call in the last week. Most of the calls were addressed to Sarah, but a large number of incoming and outgoing calls were to the numbers KC, KH, and KW. Of course, I had no idea who they were, but I quickly realized that the letter C means cell phone, the letter H means home, and the letter W probably means work. I checked Sarah's address book and it also listed 3 numbers, Sarah C, Sarah H, and Sarah W. I was amazed at how well my wife's phone was organized. I looked at Sarah's work number and noticed that he had an extension number. I looked at the KW number and it was the same number as Sarah's, but with a different extension. It wasn't hard to guess that Janet was calling and answering calls from someone who worked with Sarah. It was also easy to guess that it was Sarah who must have introduced Janet and the mysterious company K. Gilbert Engineering is currently closed, so I took Janet's phone and called KW. Hello, you've reached Ken Sanders' phone. I'm not here right now, but if you leave your name and phone number, I'll call you back as soon as I can. I hung up right after the beep. It was too easy. John, are you going to bed? Janet just poked her head in the doorway. I've almost finished reading this book. I'll go to bed as soon as I finish reading, if I don't fall asleep on the couch. Of course, I had a firm intention to sleep on the couch. It was a restless night. I kept trying to figure out what I had done wrong or what I could have done differently. It was a terrible waste of time and mental strength. Every time I switched my thoughts to what I should have done, they returned to what I had done wrong. I kept looking at the clock, but it didn't move. All I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to take any blame for what happened or what was going to happen. I woke up to my two little angels cooking breakfast. Janet advised them to take care of themselves rather than force themselves to serve. It was a good idea and it seems to have worked. I stretched and scratched myself when my wife came into the room. You'd better hurry, John, or you'll be late for work. No problem. I'm not going to work today. Why? You never miss work. There are too many personal problems. I yawned and staggered into the bathroom. I needed to take a shower. Janet looked a little puzzled. When I returned, the girls had already left for school. I took a cup of coffee and sat down at the table opposite my wife. She looked up at me reluctantly as if expecting something, but not knowing what. Tell me about your novel. I didn't want to beat around the bush, but I knew perfectly well that she wasn't going to just open up and reveal her soul. Dawn, be serious. Is that why you're moping? Do you really think I'm cheating on you? Yes. Now tell me about your novel. We've been married for 12 years, John. Why do you even think that? Janet, I have a lot to do today, and I'm not going to sit here and play games with you. I'll ask you again. Tell me about your novel. My loving wife sighed in exasperation and leaned towards me. John, it's all in your head. There is no affair. Well, I'd like to thank you for being honest, but I can't do it right now. Isn't it? She leaned back in her chair and sipped her coffee, as if she had the situation under control. Can you answer me a few simple questions? Yes, John, of course. What would you like to know? Why do you go to parent meetings every week when the secretary of the parent committee says that they are held only once a month? And you have not been to any of them for 6 months. I'm not sure what you're talking about. She was a little less confident. You and Sarah go to non-existent parent-teacher conferences every Tuesday. Why would you lie about something like that? Janet thought about the question for a moment and then found the answer. I'm truly sorry, John. There was a ladies' evening at Rosie's Cantina on Tuesday, and Sarah and I were going to order a margarita for the price of 2 for 1. We didn't want you and Billy to think we were fooling around, so we didn't tell you. It was a mistake, and I apologize. From now on, we will tell you. Nice try, Janet. You know, of course, that I'm going to check it out. I'm sure Sarah will support you, but what about the people at Rosie's? John, you're making more trouble out of this than you really are. When you go to your little Tupperware parties and stuff like that, why do you take a shower before you leave in another one when you get home? She took her time again. Many women smoke at these parties. When I come home, I want to get rid of the smell in my hair. There's nothing special about it, John. Why do you wear fancy underwear when you go to these parties? You never wear anything pretty for me, except on special occasions. Every night you spend with these housewives, you wear your best. Why? I don't have a suitable answer to this question. I just want to feel dressed up sometimes when I go outside. I was starting to get mad at her lies. It's time to put an end to this. I was furious, and it was hard to control. These are the panties you were wearing last night. I threw them on the table. When you came home, your panties were wet and covered with something sticky. Janet shifted in her chair at that moment. She tried not to look at me. There didn't seem to be a quick response. Damn it, Janet. Why did you come home last night in stained underpants? I want an answer. Stop it, John. Just stop it. I can't take it anymore. We've been married for 12 years. How can you treat me like this? The continuous stream of lies and constant denial finally got to me. With all the force I could muster, I hurled my half-finished coffee cup across the room, smashing the front panel of the microwave oven. This time, I undoubtedly caught Janet's attention. I had never seen her look like that before because she had never seen me angry before. Leaning across the table, I looked directly at her and spoke louder than before. Who the hell is Ken Sanders? She jumped up from her chair and back towards the sink, trying to get away from me. For the last damn time, who the hell is Ken Sanders? A friend, just a friend. She was scared to death when those words came out of her mouth. Did you have something with him? Yes, I had sex with him. Did you make love to him last night? Yes, it is. Stop it, John. Please stop it. I'm sorry. Just stop, please. She was standing at the sink and crying like crazy. I took a cup out of the cupboard and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. As I started to sit down, Janet's cell phone rang. Her gaze darted from me to the phone and back again. It's from Ken. I think we'd better answer it. I pressed the speakerphone button and answered the call. Good morning, honey. I just came to work and saw that you tried to call me at my work number last night. Did you forget something at my place, Janet? Or should I say sweet? Looked depressed. There was a moment of silence. Janet, are you there? Is something wrong? She looked at me with a petrified expression. I nodded at her to answer. Ken, she hesitated. Ken, my husband is here. He knows about us. His phone is on speakerphone. He didn't hang up, but he didn't answer either. I felt obliged to let him go. Ken, my friend, I have a few things I have to do this morning, but I promise to come by your place after lunch. You should dial 911 on speed dial. I ended the call and put the phone back in my pocket. Janet just stood at the sink in her bathrobe and shivered. I have to go now. I have one more question. What's the name of the guy Sarah's dating? Don. No, please don't make me. The second cup flew across the room and smashed against the tiled wall behind the sink. She jumped back and couldn't speak fast enough. Calvin Bostic. I'll be back in the afternoon. By then, move all your things. My mom will stay with the girls until we agree on something else. Anything you can't take with you in the car, I'll deliver for you. Let my mom know where you'll be. Don't call me. She didn't move or say anything else when I walked out the door. Of course, I had no idea what to do next. I decided to go into the office and see Billy. I thought of him as a friend and felt that he should know what was going on. It was pretty easy to guess that Sarah met Calvin at work and became friends with him. Everyone was probably Calvin's friend who needed to go on a date. I may have simplified the situation a bit, but it seemed to me that it was enough. Billy wasn't in the office. He was at the construction site, installing some poles or something like that. I called him on his cell phone. Billy, I don't want to bother you, but I have some bad news. Has anyone been hurt? Not yet, but it will be soon. What the hell are you talking about, John? Janet and Sarah have got a couple of boyfriends. On all those nights when they were supposed to go to Tupperware meetings and parties, they really got together with them. Are you sure? I don't believe you, Don. It sounds like some kind of bullshit to me. Ask Sarah about a guy named Calvin Bostic. He works with her. I think she introduced Janet to another guy, also from there. Damn, are you sure? Am it? Done. I know Calvin Bostic. We were in the same senior year. What about a guy named Ken Sanders? Yes, with him too. A tall, thin guy. Billy, I believe Janet is going to warn Sarah as soon as she can. Janet told me a bunch of lies this morning before I pinned her to the wall. I'm sure Sarah will return the favor. Billy hung up the phone, and I went to the HR department to ask for a short vacation. I didn't want to work right now. It took only 10 minutes to transfer the work I had to another draftsman. Around this time, Janet's cell phone rang. The caller ID showed that it was Sarah. Janet, what the hell is going on? Billy just called me. He's on his way to the office. I think someone told him something. I didn't answer her. Janet, are you there? This is not a good time for games. Hi, Sarah. This is John. I had to borrow Janet's cell phone this morning. Mine's dead. What are you talking about, Sarah? What exactly did someone say to Billy? I couldn't help myself. At that moment, I felt mean and disgusting. I'm sorry, John. I thought I was calling Janet. I'll try to catch her at home. I don't think you should bother her right now. She's very busy and she's packing her things. She doesn't have time to talk. What do you mean, packing your things? She's going to go back to her parents for a while. The pause on the other end of the line was hilarious. I smiled as I imagined all the scenarios that were running through Sarah's head. I think it would be more important for you to tell Calvin that Billy is on his way. He probably could use a head start. Oh my God. No, this can't be happening. No, no. She hung up the phone. That's the audacity of this woman. We only had one credit card, so it wasn't difficult to cancel it. We also had a debit card at the ATM. It took me 5 minutes to change my PIN. I had no idea what to do with the current account, so I just ignored it for now. I needed it to pay for utilities and other bills. I just hoped Janet hadn't brought any checks with her. My cell phone rang again, but this time it was mine. Billy chased Calvin Bostic and caught him in the parking lot. He was in jail and wanted me to hand him over to his brother and Lancaster to come and bail him out. I called his brother. There was nothing else I could do for Billy, so I went to Taco Bell. After lunch, I stopped by to see my mom and dad. I explained everything to them. Mom was more than willing to look after the girls for a while. They stayed with me during the week, and the twins stayed with him on weekends. Now it's time to visit Ken Sanders. The guys from the editorial department couldn't wait to tell me about Billy's visit that morning. The editorial department overlooks the parking lot, and they saw everything that was happening. Billy caught Calvin before he could get to his BMW. He threw Billy onto the hood of one of the cars and started hitting him in the face. The guards followed them and unsuccessfully tried to pull Billy away. Finally, one of them hit Billy in the neck with a taser. He was still unconscious when he was pushed into a police car. They had to take Calvin away in an ambulance. One of the guys showed me the booth where Ken Sanders worked. It was empty. Looks like old Ken quit abruptly this morning. We went to Sarah's desk and she wasn't there either, but it looked like she was still working there. 10 minutes later, I had Ken's home address and headed for the parking lot. It was a small house without a garage. There was a white Lexus parked in the driveway with the trunk and rear doors open. When I got to the door, Ken Sanders was coming out with an arm full of clothes in his hands. He dropped everything and rushed back into the house as soon as he saw me. I tripped over the things he dropped and managed to see him leave through the back door as I entered. I couldn't help but laugh at his reaction. Damn it, I didn't look like Billy. I was a good guy. It was like an apartment that was rented fully furnished. That's why he didn't have a truck. 10 more minutes and he would have finished and left town. I couldn't wait to chat with Ken, but I didn't want to chase him. I looked around the room for something interesting and found some pleasant surprises. The first thing I picked up was his mobile phone. It was lying on the desk in the living room next to a folder with his passport and some personal papers. There was a cute little laptop computer on the dining table. I couldn't find anything else, so I packed up what little I had and left. I didn't want to do anything that could be considered a crime, so I suppressed the urge to smash his car. It was wonderful. I suppose it was a crime to take things out of the house, but damn it, he left the door open and anyone could have taken them. Unable to fully control myself, I let the air out of only one of his tires. He would have had to unload the truck to get to the spare tire, and I'm sure he would have done it while looking outside for me. I'll contact him later. He got the message. I stopped by the prison to see Billy. His brother was there, and they were busy with legal matters, so I just waved at him and smiled. He seemed to have everything under control. Mom was already at home and cooking dinner. We chatted for a while, and then I took the things I took from Ken to the office where I kept my computer and stuff. Before I could see anything, Beth and Britt came home from school. I decided it would be better to tell them what was going on before they asked. I didn't have that opportunity. Hi, Dad. What is Grandma doing here? Where's Mom? Bethany beat me to it. Your mom and I decided to take a little break from each other. She's going to stay with her parents for a while. Brittany started to smile and Beth rolled her eyes and moaned. I won. Har har, I won. I told you so. Britt was happy about something and her sister was frowning. What's going on? What's so funny about that? Brittany volunteered to explain. Beth and I had an argument. I said that Mom was cheating on you, and she said that would never happen. Looks like I won. I never said anything about your mom cheating on me. We're not stupid, Dad, and don't treat us like children. We know what's going on. I just didn't want to admit it. Britt is right. Mom is cheating on you. How did you know that? I just found out. You're a little slow, Dad, and too trusting. Britt put her arm around my shoulders. It was strange. A 12-year-old girl trying to comfort her father. One Saturday, when Mom and Sarah said they were going shopping at the King of Prussia, Mom wouldn't let Brittany go with them. She said it's an adult shopping day, and she's coming with us later. When we got to school on Monday, a couple of the kids said they saw her with a guy in Nobles Grove. We called them liars, but one of the girls had a picture on her mobile phone. It looked pretty corny. I thought there had to be some explanation, but Britt said she was cheating on you. Why didn't you tell me anything? They both just shrugged their shoulders. A couple of weeks later, Tracy Mercer's parents saw Sarah, Mom, and two guys in Allentown. They told Tracy about it when they got home. I sat stunned. Thank God Grandma invited us to dinner. We didn't discuss this issue at dinner, and I excused myself before dessert was served. Fortunately, the twins decided to leave this topic for the rest of the evening. I felt relieved. I had just started looking through Ken's laptop when his cell phone rang. It was a text message. DKS Ray 4, LYJ malfunction. Dear Ken, I'm sorry for the problems. I love Janet. I'm not the best text messaging specialist in the world. I'm actually pretty bad, but I read this message without difficulty. It came from Sarah's mobile phone. which meant that Sarah and Janet were together. I couldn't resist the temptation. Now she knew that I had Ken's cell phone. I spent the next couple of hours going through files and folders on Ken's computer. Janet and Ken did not correspond by email, but there were some interesting letters between Ken and some old friends in Lancaster. I was amazed by what I read, and I definitely didn't like it. Janet and I have been together almost all our lives, and now I realize that I never really knew her. It seemed that in less than a year she had become closer to Ken than she had been to me in almost 12 years. When I was replacing the cartridge in the printer, I noticed that I was crying. I don't usually do that. She had hurt me with her deception, and now I felt like I was pouring salt on the wounds. Maybe it's because of my tears. I printed out several emails and a dozen photos. I would have taken more photos, but I ran out of expensive paper. There were no pictures, not even anything spicy. All of them were suitable for a mixed company. Beth stuck her nose in the door and asked if she could call her mother. I didn't feel like I could refuse. My mom was with the twins when they were talking to Janet, and she heard everything. She wasn't eavesdropping, but it didn't seem like the girls were trying to hide anything. Later, Mom told me that they didn't give Janet any favors and blamed her for the whole problem. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. The emails were extremely interesting. Ken applied and was hired as an engineer for an alternative energy project in Spain. He was scheduled to start work in 6 weeks. Apparently, he did not notify the company of his departure. I'm sure Sarah knew, but no one else mentioned it. He had all the documents for the trip ready, except for his passport, which I had. I'm sure he could get a replacement, but he'd better hurry if he wants to make it to the departure date. I think he could always go to the police and claim that I stole it, but I didn't think he would do that. He hasn't booked a plane ticket yet. One of the emails to a close friend explained a lot. Janet planned to get divorced after she joined Ken in Spain. She realized that I would never let her take the girls out of the country, so she was going to get me recognized as an unfit father. The letter did not give many details about how she was going to achieve this, but indicated that it would be harsh enough to deprive me of the right to date the twins or custody. It was just mean. Ken wrote this letter, so it was all a rumor. I would have liked to hear something original from Janet describing this, but I had to make do with what I had. I have printed out several copies of this letter. Mom was falling asleep watching TV, so I sent her to our bedroom. The girls were already in bed. I fell asleep on the couch, and there were 4 empty beer bottles on the coffee table. I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and bacon. Mom always made a delicious breakfast. The girls were finishing their cereal when I put it on the table. I had to endure a few good-natured remarks before I could start scrambling eggs. The conversation was casual until it was time to get on the bus. Girls, I'm afraid that your mother will try to separate us. She plans to declare me an unsuitable parent so that you are completely at her disposal. I have no problem with joint custody if it makes you both happy, but I will not give up my right to see you and be with you. I don't want you to have to take sides, but I want you to know what's going on. Be careful and don't listen to any lies. Dad, we're smarter than you think. Don't worry about anything. We love Mom, but we won't let her set you up or us up. Brittany smiled and Beth gave me a thumbs up as they walked out the door. Mom filled my cup and poured herself one. Relax, John. Everything is on your side. After showering and shaving, I put on some clothes that were a little better than the ones I usually wear. When I left the house, I felt a little strange because I had 3 cell phones with me. I made a mental note to buy a charger for the cell phone that Ken give me. I probably won't need it, but I'd rather be prepared for it. I checked in at the family support office and waited for the social worker to call me. I was embarrassed when I finally got the call because I was familiar with the woman who came to my rescue. John Terrell, I haven't seen you in over 10 years. What have you been doing? Jody Mitchell was easy to remember. In high school, she was one of the goth girls. The Goths had their own small group and they stuck together. Most other children, especially athletes, including me, ostracized them. She looked fine now, but I will always remember her with only pink streaks in her hair, black lipstick and dark eye makeup. The funny thing about Goths is that you could never tell if they were addicted to illegal substances or witchcraft. In Jody's opinion, it was probably neither, but you always believed in the most outrageous things. The nameplate on her desk said J. Mitchell, so I assumed that she had never been married. 12 years ago, I could have understood that, but today she looked at me. John, what can I do for you? Her question interrupted my thoughts. I found myself stuttering a little. You look great, Jody. She laughed at my awkwardness. You mean compared to how I used to look? Now I'm confused. Probably, but I didn't mean to imply anything like that. Relax, John. I was halfway through college when I realized I was smart enough to look at the world the way I am, without a fake facade. I've been, as you would say, normal for almost 10 years. Am much more comfortable with being normal than before. Am it, but that sounds patronizing. I can hardly restrain myself from saying too much. You'll have to excuse me. Forget about it. So, why are you here? Before we start, I have to ask you a question. Do you have a file or a report on me? Anything at all? Her fingers danced over the keys like a pianist's. There's nothing here, John. You really married Janet Wilcox. Is that right? Yes. There's nothing in her name either. It looks like you two are feeding your kids, not beating them up. You have kids, right? Yes. We have 12-year-old twin girls, Bethany and Brittany. Good. Now, can we get to the problem that brought you here? Jody, this is a little far-fetched, and I know it may seem hard to believe, but my wife is planning to leave me and wants to take the girls with her. It's not hard to believe, John. We see this all the time. Shouldn't she have a reason to do something like that? Usually, when the mother comes to us, she has documents or something else confirming the accusation. You just checked, and there's nothing there right now. Right? That's right, John. But how do I know you're not setting me up? Maybe you did something, and she hasn't had time to report it yet. You may be getting medical information or police reports before coming to our office. Just because we don't show anything on our computer doesn't mean you didn't do anything. You mean I can't win? No, I'm not saying that. Why do you think she's going to do something like that? I had no intention of showing anyone the email consent, but now I felt like I had no choice. I had to ask myself why I made copies if I wasn't going to give them to anyone. I handed one of them across Jody's desk. Where did you get this? What is it? She asked. I took it off a computer that I got illegally. I know it can't be used for any legal reasons, but it's kind of proof of what's going on. The word conspiracy comes to mind, but I do not know its legal definition. I wanted to talk to you or someone in this office because I didn't know what to do. I do not know how to protect myself and my daughters from something like this, and I cannot afford to hire a lawyer. Jody Mitchell leaned back in her chair, relaxed. I watched her without blinking. She rocked back and forth a few times and leaned towards me. Can you come back tomorrow morning? Yes, great. Then I'll see you. May I keep a copy of this letter? I nodded yes and turned to walk out the door. It was nice to see you, John. I smiled and she smiled back. I forgot about the goth girl and saw the new Jody. I didn't know any lawyers, and I didn't know anyone who was familiar with lawyers, so I had to choose someone from the phone book. I knew she was planning to divorce me, but circumstances could change. I didn't want to take any chances. I wasn't sure what our financial situation would look like in the next few days or weeks, so I asked the lawyer to tell me the cost of the entire package of services in advance and paid in cash. I advised him to do it the fastest and easiest way he knew. If she wanted this house, she could have it. Due to the depreciation of the property, it cost less than the mortgage. Another thing I insisted on was at least joint custody of the twins. I would take full custody if he could do it. I would pay child support, but without alimony to my wife. Billy called me on the way to lunch. He needed a place to stay, and of course I offered to take him in. We met at Taco Bell for a gourmet lunch. When I approached, he had a silly smile on his face. I know you can't be that happy. What happened? My friend, who works at the Municipal General Hospital, told me a little about Calvin. Sarah went there to visit him. While she was there, Calvin's wife came in with 2 children. Sarah had no idea he was married. It became so chaotic that the hospital's security staff had to escort Sarah out. I went to her office to talk to her, but she was no longer there. She had quit. I think she must be at home now, but I'm not sure. Why didn't his wife live here with him? I don't know. Why didn't he go home to his wife and children for the weekend? I don't know that either. Honestly, I don't give a shit. Billy took a week off from work to get things in order. I didn't know where he was going to sleep, since my mom was staying at home too, but we decided we'd figure something out. He was going to stop by his house to pick up some clothes and personal belongings in case Sarah wasn't there. In the end, he decided he didn't want to talk to her. I went to my insurance agent, but I didn't make it in time because my cell phone rang again. John, this is Cameron Wilcox. Could you stop by my house for a while so we can try to figure this out? Janet is desperate, and her mother is not helping. Who will be there? The 3 of us and Janet's sister, Carla. I'm not sure what you're hoping to achieve, but I'll be there in about 20 minutes. It was a gloomy company. I took a bag of goodies with me and refused coffee. Who wants to start? John, Janet seems to think you're overreacting. She claims that you were furious and forced her to tell lies to calm you down. She claims she didn't do anything wrong, and you have no right to kick her out. I have the distinct impression that my dear wife has given a very simplified version of what happened to her parents. I can understand why she didn't want to admit her infidelity to them, but I resented the fact that she shifted the blame to me. What do you want me to do, Cameron? Did you prove that she was a liar, or did you admit that I made a mistake? I would just like to get acquainted with some facts so that we can better understand the situation. What did she tell you about her boyfriend? She claims that she didn't have a friend. She just had a drink with friends that Sarah worked with, and you misinterpreted it. Cameron, she's had over 80 phone conversations with this random acquaintance in the last month. How many times has she called you and her mother in the last month? They both looked at Janet. She was looking at her feet, not at them. Does this sound like a random friend she meets up with for a drink sometimes? Everyone was silent when I took out Ken's cell phone. Carla, can you read text messages? This message was sent by her random friend right after I kicked her out. Why don't you read it to everyone? Dear Ken, I'm sorry to bother you. I love Janet. Carla gave me back my phone. Does this look like a casual acquaintance? Janet covered her face with her hands and shook his head slowly. A couple of weeks ago, Janet and her friend Sarah told everyone that they were going shopping at the King of Prussia shopping center. The twins begged to go with them, but their mother said no. Here are some photos that were taken during this trip. I handed Cameron's 6 photos, which he looked through and gave to Martha and Carla. It doesn't sound like the King of Prussia. It's like the Nobel Grove. Amit, Janet. What's going on? Martha had been silent until that moment. Janet, in every photo you are holding onto this man's hand with all your might. You don't do that to friends. It looks like the guy in these photos, Ken, is, I guess, much more than a friend. What were you trying to portray here? The tears flowed slowly and imperceptibly. That wasn't what she had hoped for. She hadn't expected to see the photos. Here are a few more of the same. I think 2 of them are from Olive Garden and 1 looks like a red lobster. I have a few more. Fortunately, my loving wife is wearing all of them. I think we've seen enough, John. I'm sorry that we had to call you here because of this. Cameron seemed upset that he had been tricked. When I got up, Janet was leaving the room, sobbing like a child. We haven't been able to discuss the stains on her underwear. I don't think it was necessary at that moment. Cameron walked me to the door. John, I'm sorry that we can't fix what's being done, but I guarantee you that it won't go unnoticed. He shook my hand when I left. When I got home, Mom and Billy put a folding bed in the study. In fact, it was not an office, but just a small additional room in which I kept a computer. Billy had a stack of spare clothes in the corner that he had brought from home. Sarah was not at home when he came in. The most interesting thing that was waiting for me at home was the mail. In fact, she wasn't waiting for me, but for Janet. A beautiful official envelope from the passport department. I knew I shouldn't have opened it, but I couldn't help myself. Of course, it was a passport, but rather, it was a family passport. The photo was of Janet and 2 girls. I remembered how the girls told me that they had been photographed, but I could not imagine that it was done for such a purpose. Of course, my passport was not in the envelope. I immediately called Cameron and asked him to tell Janet that the letter had arrived. If she needed a passport, all she had to do was send Cameron home to get it. I would only give it to Cameron. Normally, I would have been at work when the mail arrived. I would never have known that she had run away. Cameron informed me that they had asked Janet to find another place to live. They had no idea where she was going to go. It looked like they were a little mad at their daughter. He promised to tell her about the passport. The dinner conversation was interesting, and mostly girls participated in it. A lady from the family support service came to our school today. Bethany said with a slight, shy smile, "Would you like to tell us a little about it? Did she talk to you together or separately?" "With both of us at the same time. Her name was Jody. She said that you went to high school together." "We went to the same high school at the same time, but we weren't together." Britt gave me a disapproving look for being so smart. "Pay attention, Dad. What did she want to talk to you about?" "About you. She was only talking about you. Beth and I both agree that she likes you. Did you understand this from a short conversation? She talked to us for over an hour. We skipped physical education and part of the geography lesson. They were talking at the same time, and I could hardly keep up with them. Dinner was interrupted by Carla's phone call. She wanted to talk. I met Janet's sister at McDonald's. We sat down at a table in the corner and drank 2 very hot coffees each. Done. Janet asked me to try to explain what's going on. She couldn't do it on her own. This may sound stupid, but if I have any questions, how will you answer them? I don't think I can do it. All I can do is talk, and you listen. I'm sure I'll get something mixed up anyway, because when she told me that, most of it sounded like nonsense. You're setting me up to tell me later that you have no answers, just excuses and excuses. I always knew you were smart, John. Let's get this over with. I have other things to do. At first she blames Sarah for everything. Sarah started cheating on Billy and made it look like it was exciting and romantic. Janet said she had never experienced anything exciting or romantic. All she's ever had is you, loving and reliable. When Ken Sanders first started working at Gilbert's, Sarah convinced Janet to invite them out for a drink and a snack. While they were together, Sarah and Calvin often disappeared to make love for a while and left Janet and Ken alone. Eventually, they started dating too, and it soon turned into a real romance. Once it started, she couldn't or wouldn't stop it. Ken impressed her with his stories about what he was doing and what he was going to do, and she wanted to go with him and share it all. When he asked her to go to Spain, she gladly agreed. The big problem was not to leave you, but to leave the girls. She knew that you would never let her take them abroad, so she was going to come up with a way to make you look like a bad father. Now she realizes that it was a mistake. After talking to the girls, she realized that they were closer to you than to her. She decided she wouldn't try to take the twins if you agreed to a no strings attached to a divorce. Is that all? Almost so. Yes, good. Tell her to get the paperwork done. I won't dispute it if everything is as you described. Oh, John, and one more thing. Janet would like to get her passport. Do you have it with you? Now everything began to clear up. I had no idea how she was going to do it, but I suspected that she had not given up hope of taking the girls with her. They would kick and scratch all the way, unless she had something in stock. A family passport was a real blow to the deal. Carla, my coffee is cold. I'm going to go home and take a hot shower. Don't call me anymore. John, what the hell is wrong? What did I do to make you so angry? You know perfectly well what you've done. Do you both really think I'm that stupid? Go back to your sister and tell her that she will never dare to lay hands on my daughters. Since you decided to help her, I have to ask you never to talk to my girls again. Carla was talking on her cell phone when I left the cafe. I can only guess who she was calling. I arrived at the family service office before it opened. Couldn't stay away from me. Could you? Jody walked into the office with a big smile on her face and a cup of coffee in her hand. She motioned for me to sit down and apologized for not taking more coffee. I think you know that I talked to your daughters yesterday. I nodded and smiled. For some reason, my tongue was a little slurred. I was not at ease. I remembered that the same thing happened the last time I talked to her. Since I've been with Janet my whole life, I've never had the opportunity to develop any communication skills with other women. It looks like I'm paying the price now. Is something wrong, John? Otherwise, no. I wasn't trying to be smart. I just couldn't find the words. I'm sorry, Jody. I think I'd better leave. I can't think about all this morning. I'll call you back later. Before you leave, I'd like you to know that I'm seeking an injunction against your wife. I can't stop her from seeing the girls or being with them, but I can stop her from taking them out of the state or deny you access to them. The band will be delivered to her before noon. It made me smile broadly, but I left the office anyway. I headed to the nearest Starbucks. The coffee smelled really good there. Everything was under control until today. Now I felt depressed and confused. I drove around the city for a while and then headed home. Billy told me that Sarah had returned to her parents' house near Ephrata, so he was going to return to his apartment until he could sell it or rent it out. He spent the morning at the bank, the insurance company, and the lawyer's office. He wanted to try to get some money from the company, but there were no rules in their company prohibiting friendships. His lawyer said it would not be an easy fight. He went to the hospital and found out that Calvin was being discharged. His wife was doing the paperwork for the discharge when she saw Billy. Before he could leave, she cornered him and carefully explained that she was trying to get Calvin to drop the charges against him. He was very surprised when she thanked him for his help. Apparently, she had been trying unsuccessfully to establish a relationship with Calvin for several years. After Billy left, I just sat on the porch and drank beer. Mom brought me a meatloaf sandwich and sat with me for a while. She didn't say anything, but she drank the beer. She said Dad would come over for dinner and stay the night. When Jody Mitchell drove up, Mom came into the house. Jody sat down next to me, but declined the cold beer I offered. We sat for a few seconds before she spoke. I handed over the documents to Janet about an hour ago. She was a very irritated woman. By the way, she lives with her sister. I finished what I was holding in my hand. It's probably good, but why do I feel so bad? In such cases, John, there is nothing good. It's just not that bad. I took out another beer, waited, and then put it back in the fridge. Could you come in and explain all this to the girls? I got along well with them, but no matter how carefully I choose my words, it will sound like I'm putting the blame on their mother. I'm afraid that if I do that, I'll push them away somehow. I don't want to do this. How about 7 in the evening? I nodded as she got up and headed for her car. Halfway there, she stopped and looked back. It was a good sign, and I smiled. She smiled back. Jody came over that evening and spent a lot of time with Beth and Britt. Billy and I were busy looking around his house and cleaning up everything that belonged to Sarah or reminded him of Sarah. Jody started coming to us several times a week. Pretty soon she started spending as much time with my mom as she did with the girls. I noticed that she was ignoring me. It suited me, but I was curious. One evening, when the girls had already gone to bed, she sat down next to me. I felt I had to talk to her. I didn't have a chance. She spoke first. John, do you have any wine? Well, sort of. My conversational skills still needed to be improved. What does this mean? I don't have anything that would be closed with a cork. I have wine, but it's all with screw caps. She seemed to find it funny. Bring me something red, please, and show me the bottle. The bottle was more like a jug, but she didn't seem to mind. I poured it, and we took a sip. Finally, I forced myself to break the ice. I think the girls get a lot of benefit from your visits. How long are you going to see them? Oh, the twins are fine. They don't need to see me. I'm going over to them to see you. I don't understand. You hardly talk to me when you're here. I thought that was what you wanted. Not really. I was just afraid that you had some rules against communicating with clients. Her soft laugh made me feel more comfortable. I'm amazed that you didn't even ask to see my tattoos. What kind of tattoos? It was obvious that she was trying to draw me into some kind of frivolous conversation to try to liberate me. It was a good plan, and I appreciated it. I have 4 of them that I made when I was in high school. 3 of them are easy to find, but 1 of them is more difficult. Are you going to show them to me, or should I look for them myself? It'll be more fun if you watch it yourself, but I'll need some more wine if you're going to do it. We both laughed when I filled her glass to the brim. The hunt was much more exciting because we had to be quiet, so as not to wake the girls. The 4th one was really in a very secluded place, and I admired her for a long time until she pushed me away. She left before the twins got out of bed, but I had a strange feeling that they knew what had happened. I asked my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers and send them by mail. Janet was forced to accept what I suggested or do it on her own. She was still living with Carla when the documents were delivered. There was no response, and I didn't even get a phone call. A few more weeks have passed. Things weren't going well with my father. Mom spent more time there than at my place. Unfortunately, the school year was just ending, and the girls moved in with her for the summer. By the end of the summer, Dad was moved to a nursing home. Billy and I helped Mom prepare the family home for sale, and Mom came back to me. All summer, Jody stayed with Mom and the girls and spent 3 or 4 evenings a week with me. They went shopping and to restaurants together, and I was glad of the attention Brittany and Bethany were giving. At least I wasn't jealous of them anymore. I was sure they knew what was going on between Jody and me. Janet called the girls about once a week, but the conversations were always short and, according to Mom, seemed tense. In most cases, the twins didn't even tell me that she had called. Billy's divorce from Sarah was finalized. I had no idea how things were going with my divorce. He also decided that he wanted to start his own surveying business and asked me to join him. I had some money to contribute until my mom came to the rescue. Instead of watching the money melt away, she decided that I should use it for business. I suppose she also saw it as an investment in her future. 3 months later, Billy and I had our own small surveying business. Fortunately, my drawing skills have shifted to plotting. About a week after the start of the new semester at school, the twins were visited by their mother. They thought they were going to the guidance room to see Jody and were disappointed to see Janet. They tried their best to be polite and respectful towards her, but it still didn't work out. She told them that she loved them both and was sorry that things had turned out this way. She's going to Spain to see the windmills, and she's going to send them some postcards. She promised to call them every year on their birthday and send them amazing Christmas gifts. They said she was crying when she left. Janet never called me to tell me she was leaving, but her parents showed up at the house the following week. They apologized once again for what Janet had done, but did not try to defend her or justify her actions. Brittany and Bethany were their only granddaughters, and they wanted to be able to see them. I had no problem with their request. They said that Carla was too ashamed to come to me. She was torn between her sister and her parents. 2 months later, my divorce was finalized. Jody and I went to the Red Lobster to celebrate. It was a rare evening without girls. They didn't seem to mind. In fact, I think they were even happy. We spent the night at the local Holiday Inn. The twins were delighted when I got home at 10 o'clock in the morning. They didn't say anything, but they were smiling from ear to ear all day. A year later, business was going great, but unfortunately, my father passed away. Mom expressed interest in moving to Florida with her sister, but did not want to leave the girls. The twins felt that Grandma should leave. They carefully explained to me that Jody could take her place, even though she couldn't cook as well as my mom. They also insisted that they were old enough to live in separate rooms. It was an obvious and good plan. The girls received greeting cards from their mother, but never received a phone call. She also sent me a lot of postcards. All the postcards depicted Spanish windmills. I wasn't sure what that meant. She sent them 2 elegant embroidered dresses for Christmas, but she did not expect that the girls, having reached adolescence, would grow up so quickly. None of them seemed disappointed that the dresses were too small. Gilbert Engineering has become our largest customer. Billy was pleased to learn that Calvin now teaches electronics at the Lebanon County Vocational School. which has significantly improved his position compared to his previous position. He was no longer married. Sarah remarried and moved to California. Ken Sanders didn't last even 6 months in his new job. Now he was working in the States, but no one seemed to know where exactly. Billy contacted the Alumni Association of his high school to see if he could find out. My best friend always thought that I broke up with Ken too easily. The strange thing was that the girls were still receiving postcards with windmills. There was never any information on the postcards, only general wishes. Cameron told me that Janet called them several times. She worked at a travel agency in Barcelona. She never mentioned Ken or gave them any information about what happened between them. Jody and I took a short trip to Maryland to get married quietly. A year later, she was pregnant. Brittany and Bethany were as excited as we were. They were looking forward to having a goth girl sister. I think it was some kind of joke between the girls and their new mom. They never let me in on this. I have never understood the meaning of Spanish windmills.